So I hate that we're starting the news section with some like terrible news, horrific news anyway. But it's Nancy Drew has been final seasoned for season 4, which I guess essentially is a cancellation since they were filming it.
Yeah,
Um, it's sad.
it's very sad. I don't even know where to begin. Michael,
I,
you always have
Yep.
the intelligent thought. What is it?
My analysis is very biased today. How do you even like comprehend that? Like, here we are again. We thought we'd make it out of this year with at least no cancellations, or if there was a cancellation, you'd think it was from one of the shows on the air at the moment. What went into this decision? Where did it come from? You're right. It feels very much like a cancellation, even though it's a final season. Like if Nancy had been renewed for a final season back in March, you would have been like, yay, one more for Nancy. But now it kind of feels like it's been cut short, even if the story tells us this was the original plan all along. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to repeat the old tired phrase at this stage that Nancy deserved better, but that's what this year has been all about.
yeah, it's really weird because if it was always going to be final season, then they could have said that when it was early renewed
Mm-hmm.
instead of having the fans and I guess the actors going through into the season 4 filming thinking that there was a possibility for more. And they were like, no, it's not a possibility for more. We're ending. It's just it was a strange way to go about a show that you were going to final season anyway.
And it stresses me out because according to Deadline, um, the discussions about this being the final season have been going on for quote months. And apparently the decision was made before Mark left the CW. So I'm like, how long was the show in limbo and we didn't know and the cast didn't know? Like, I think what I want from the CW in this new era is more transparency because
Mhm.
no reasoning was provided. And I think a reason or something is really helpful to fans. Like whether it's like, oh, while we were writing, we found like this is a great ending point for this story. Great, tell us that. If it was just like a business decision, we won't understand, but tell us. You can't tell us it's ratings because the season hasn't premiered yet. And obviously the ratings were good enough to elicit a 4th season renewal, but just tell us. Give us a reason. Give the fans something to kind of understand why this happened. Because if you're telling us that it's been in the works for months, that doesn't track with what we know to be true. And it doesn't make sense. And right now in this era with things being canceled and we don't know what's going on, getting a cancellation, essentially a cancellation in the middle of production of a show that the fans are so excited about. They were so thrilled that it got renewed in the first place during an absolute bloodbath. Why I don't why was it in talks for months? And it was, I don't know. And Deadline also said that it's not unexpected. To whom?
Right. I know. I remember the celebrations after it was renewed because obviously the fans were so happy about it. And I mean, if the fans were so passionate about it, making it happen, and they were like, they did it. So I feel like the silver lining here could be that maybe Mark was the one that overseen it, saw it getting a final season because he's always been very vocal about how he loves his shows getting final seasons. And he would have done the same with Batwoman at Legends that Warner Brothers not prevented them from doing so. Maybe this is what that looked like. Maybe this is what that would have been. He got it with Nancy Drew, maybe he oversaw this. I just don't like the fact that, as Reed said, there wasn't an awful lot of transparency about it. So the cast may have started filming this season as though it was just any other old season. But did the creative team know? Did the writers know? Did the producers know? Or was this just it's been in the works by the top down who are not involved in the scripts? Because I know the Deadline article did say that they're crafting a final season. And is that crafting a final season like Dynasty had to do, where they had 6 episodes to work with to get that end game? Or is it that they've been crafting it from the very beginning, kind of like Supergirl did back in the good old days of the CW? It just, again, I feel transparency is a great word because it just feels like it came out of nowhere. And yet the article's telling us that it didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is a dynasty situation where we're going to, in the back half of season 4 of Nancy Drew, start beginning to lay the flowers down. It's very weird for them to be like, oh, we're crafting. It's like, okay, but y'all were dropping little nice hints through in the early parts of filming, which there wasn't anything to suggest they were heading towards a final season by what had like the little nuggets that they'd been dropping for months. Again, this is like a whole, if it's a month long talk, shouldn't it feel like a month long talk? Shouldn't we have already like begun sort of slowly getting the fandom and everyone ready for the show to go off without actually saying the show was going to go off? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. The only thing I could think of as far as a reason, which they probably will not tell us, is that they need to start making room on the roster for their new shows if they're going to be introducing new titles, because CW has always, well, not always, but it's had a veteran lineup for a while now, which is why there was such a bloodbath this year. I want to say last year, but we're not even done with the year yet, and we're still canceling things. And technically, so that means that Riverdale is final season in 2023. So is The Flash, and now Nancy Drew. That's 3 shows. That's 3 slots that they have to fill with content, whether it's scripted or unscripted.
And we're still not even out of the woods. Like, who knows what could still happen.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, this does kind of feel like a silver lining for the Winchesters and Walker Independents, as horrible as that is to say. Because as soon as I heard the news, I was like, well, I guess the Winchesters and Walker Independents are getting renewed. I don't know. But what I was going to circle back to something. The crafting the final season bit. I feel like that was lip service.
Mm.
And I think you're right that we're going to get it in the back half. I think that was like just to appease fans. I think that comes from the network. Like, oh, they're crafting a series finale that'll work. And I'm like, great. But like, have they known that from the beginning? Like you said, I just hate that the cast found out like a few hours before we did.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's good that they found out before we did, though, and weren't like cast members for shows where you find out they found out with you. And I'm just like, how rude do you have to be to not at least tell the cast before the news drops?
Yeah, it just feels like the thing that gets me the most is that a lot of this feels very last minute, and the reports are telling us that it wasn't. So like, what kind of, again, to use that word, transparency does that suggest for going forward? Like, are we just going to be blindsided by this consistently? Because like 3 final seasons is a huge thing. Great for the shows. They get to bow out with the respect they deserve, or at least a modicum of that respect, if in Nancy Drew case, because we don't know how much time they had to plan the final season. But like 3 final seasons when you've only, 9, 10, 11 shows, and we don't know if all of them will get renewed or cancelled or whatever. Does that mean cancellations can still come? Like, I know we're moving into a new era, and that's probably going to be the tagline for the CW for the next 4 or 5 years, but like, it can't happen overnight. They can't like just clear their decks. And yes, cheaper programming is an important thing. Next Star Originals is an important thing, but you need to have returnees to the network to keep it alive. And Nancy Drew might not have brought in the biggest audience. Riverdale was bringing in a smallest audience right now, but those shows were guaranteeing that at least people who watched the CW for years were coming back to watch it, maybe see trailers for new shows, and then watch those new shows. And then, of course, The Flash is one of the biggest audiences on the CW. To lose all of that in one fell swoop, and we haven't even entered the cancellations period yet, it's quite scary. Some might call it stupid, but I do understand why The Flash at Riverdale are ending. I still feel like Nancy might have had some life left in it.
Yeah, so it's a weird time for the network. We keep saying that. I feel like every time we are happy with what's happening in the CW, we end up on
just
another
like
pod.
Comfortable, or like we just like
don't get comfy.
No.
Ariana Grande, stay woke, don't sleep.
Oh my God. No, that's very true. That's very true. But before we move on, though, I guess we should list the Suffragettes series is in the works. Jake Chang is in the works, which that's a reverse. That's a Riverdale-esque show in the sense that it takes place in the Archie Comics universe, and it's a mystery. So there is that. We'll get mysteries again if the show goes forward with the season order. And the Zorro, which is still in limbo. So that's 3 shows right there. And they haven't announced any unscripted programming that's in development. I don't really want to see any of the unscripted things that they might have like cooking in the pots. They can keep that. But there are shows coming. I just wish they would.
And Just As You, of course, hopefully. Like everything sounds positive. Every update like that sounds surprisingly positive. And I feel like we're talking about returnees. That's probably the biggest one off the new shows that might get people interested again. So right now it feels like we need Just As You, but I don't know what the next year is going to look like. I just hope that a slew of cancellations don't follow 3 final seasons.
I know. I do think Justice Yu is going to take the Flash's spot, though. So that we'll see.
Mhm.
I hope
Uh,
so.
One last note
speaking,
about Nancy,
ooh,
real
okay,
quick.
yes.
In the Deadline article, I know we probably should take these things with a grain of salt, but I did think it was really interesting that there was no mention of CBS television having an intention of shopping it around.
Mhm.
Usually they will mention those things up front in some kind of press release when something gets canceled, but it was not mentioned. So it does seem like there's some finality to this decision. But I know that's not gonna stop the Drew crew from, getting out there and making sure people know Nancy's name, which go off and do your thing. Just wanted to put that out there that was something that I took note of in all of this mess.
Yes. Well, then I'm going to posit a Nancy Drew movie, CW Mo. If we're losing her, give us a season theme, like a Halloween, I don't
Mhm.
know, for next year.
Or maybe like a spooky Christmas.
Yes, that
I don't
would
know
be
if they ever
fun.
did that in the show, but spooky Christmas will be fun.
Spooky Christmas would be fun. So take it back to them all. Like we're not done with Nancy. Like they might be done with Nancy as far as season shows, but give us a TV movie. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.